East Ward Alderman Rob Foster.
Here.
East Ward Alderman Mark Bowers.
Here.
Mayor Madeline Nish.
Here.
West Ward Alderman Vicki Montgomery.
Here.
West Ward Alderman Stacy Weedy.
Here.
Thank you. And in response to the coronavirus pandemic and pursuant to the City of Marshfield executive order to abide by social distancing requirements, this meeting will be held by online video conference. A video recording of the meeting will be available within 48 hours on the City of Marshfield website. The Board of Aldermen may be in attendance via Zoom or in person, along with select staff. The public may join via Zoom. We'll start our meeting with the COVID update. Michael Taylor.
All right. Good evening. So sent out a report earlier today. So the most recent numbers we have is according to CDC, reported 6,087,403 cases in the United States, of which 39,711 are new in the last 24 hours. There's been a total of 185,092 deaths thus far. Currently, Missouri Department of Health and Senior Services are reporting 88,610 cases in Missouri. That represents a 12.9% increase over the last 7 days, and 1,545 deaths out of 1,008,078 persons tested. In Missouri, 114 of 114 counties are reporting cases. World Health is reporting 25,884,895 cases worldwide, 859,130 deaths, and that's in 216 countries. Currently, in Webster County, we've had 241 that health units had time to confirm. You'll notice states reporting 257. Are at this point, Webster County contact tracers have not confirmed those additional 14. Out of the 4,750 persons tested, currently 51 patients in the county are actively ill, 14 of which are in the central region of Webster County. 1 patient's currently hospitalized, 190 have recovered. We have 30 pending results, approximately 100 being monitored for symptoms, and approximately 60 quarantined. We've currently still had 1 death. The county by county numbers are there for you to look at. Age ranges are also present there. As for new information since our last report, is the drive-through test scheduled for September 14th at the fairgrounds has been canceled. We're looking at possibly rescheduling that for September 30th. Outside of that, there's really, well, the statistic change in Webster County, cases have increased, again, depending how you want to look at the numbers, 37 to 53. Persons tested has increased by 322. Our active cases have increased by 7 in the county. That's my report, unless we have questions.
Any questions from the board for Michael? All right, thank you, Michael.
Oh.
I'll also draw your attention to a report I've added to the packet. This is my normal report of active cases in the greater Marshfield area. So this the 241 total cases since March in Webster County, the 51 total active cases in Webster County, and of those 16 are in the 4 of 9 zones that we consider, or I consider, the greater Marshfield area. So those are our total reports today, and this report will give you a view of what has occurred since the executive order came out. Any questions on that report? In addition, you have an email in your packet. This email was also forwarded to each one of you, just as purposes. Alderman Lee had participated in a health board meeting this week and asked some great questions about these numbers and what they mean and how they are derived. This is a response that was received by myself for Alderman Lee, and we wanted to make sure everybody had the same understanding. So this has been both included here, and it's also been sent to your email addresses so that you can review that whenever you need to. Other COVID updates that I'm going to provide. So since the news story came out yesterday, one of the things that I have noticed picking up some traffic is the COVID money idea. And so I did want to give an update on that. The only COVID related money that the city is eligible for is CARES Act funding. The CARES Act was developed by the federal government. A portion of proceeds were sent to every state. The state of Missouri decided to send a portion of their money to all counties, and the county holds the grant money that we are eligible for. That is a reimbursement type grant. That means we have to spend the money on eligible expenditures and then ask for reimbursement on that. So as of today, we have received $15,971.39 in CARES Act money. This covered items of PPE that were needed for our police and fire department, along with here at City Hall. It covered additional cleaning services that were needed in order to protect our employees and the public. Medical supplies. There was just some various things that are all in that same ball game that are covered in there. We will be applying for a second reimbursement later on this year. It will cover things like the additional employee that we had to add at the pool in order to keep that facility maintained, especially the bathrooms maintained at the level that was required based on the executive order and the health unit's recommendation. So I did want to make sure that everybody knew where we were at on the CARES Fund and how much we had so far and what that money was used for. By that same token, since we do have a lot of people who are online right now, I wanted to make sure that the public knew that there is still CARES Act money available. That money is available to not just governments, but any business owner, church, school, nonprofit organization within Webster County. Items that are eligible are much of what I just said. There is a second phase that is, or a plan B, I should say, that's eligible for small business with employees of under 10. That can be used for things like utility bills, rent payments, mortgage interest that you paid during the shutdown period. If that is something that you're interested in, I would encourage you to reach out to the Grow Marshfield director, Dwayne Lavery, or to the county. They have a CARES administrator who can help you with that process. And I believe the application is actually on the county clerk's website. So if you have any COVID related expenses, much like what the city has, you are eligible to file for those. One more caveat, it is limited to $7,500 per business. Our next item of business will be discussion of conflict of interest. The other thing that's been brought up a lot on Facebook is the fact that our Westport Alderman, Vicki Montgomery, has sewn masks and sold them for $3 and $5 a piece. So we have invited our city attorney, Paul Link, and we would like to introduce that discussion. So Paul, can you please explain to us the legal basis on this?
Yes. Basically, the short answer, I'll give some more background, is I don't think there's conflict of interest here. And the reason why I say that is the alderwoman that makes the masks, yes, she makes a few masks, but it's not, the conflict of interest rules are made to be a much larger scale. Like if an alderman was, say, a concrete maker for roads, and the city did a big road project, and this alder person voted for a road project because it directly benefited this corporation that was going to make a bunch of money from the city on paving the roads. But in essence, doing a public service of assisting and helping making some masks that you're not I mean, we don't have a big factory pumping these out. I mean, we're making a few masks and making a couple dollars here and there. I don't think raises to the level of something that would be, the state would take issue with some sort of conflict of interest. Because I mean, this is not quite apples to apples, but I mean, if an older person had a child that mows grass and then the city had some sort of mowing contract come up, you wouldn't say that the older woman or older person had a conflict and couldn't vote on a mowing thing because their kid might make some money mowing grass. I mean, it just isn't, this isn't, you know, a vote on something that creates, you know, a windfall for a business to be able to get a bid on a job. This is just somebody making some masks to help out citizens that need them. So I don't think this raises to the level of what the state or the statutes would call a conflict of interest.
Okay. So on a legal basis, we understand our attorney's process on that. Vicki, would you like to speak on the matter?
I've created something that I would like to speak later when we all talk, or is that time now?
We just have to know whether or not you are abstaining now before we enter discussion.
Okay. I after talking with our attorney and after talking with some other public leaders, higher governmental leaders than just our city, I will not abstain. I've decided on a process I'm going to use during our public comment and any messages sent to me, emails that are sent to the city. I'm going to take all of that into consideration, and I will tally each opinion, and that's where I'll base my vote. And as of right now, I do not have a yes or a no.
Okay. So at this point, all of our aldermen will be, is that correct? Okay.
Yes.
And from there, we will go into reviewing the draft ordinance. The draft was provided to you both by email and in your packet. The draft was drafted by our attorney, Ms. Pauline. Do you have any specific questions that you would like to raise first?
I don't have any questions, but I think it's important to point out there are exceptions to the rule. I think there were a lot of concerns about, you know, children and those with autism and any other disorders, and there are exceptions to the rule, and the public should know that and not be fearful.
Okay. I'd like to specifically bring up the Section C, violations and penalties. I myself do not feel that we have the manpower to enforce fines on this issue. What are your thoughts on that matter?
My thoughts are that we can, if this were to go through and this were to become ordinance, that it would be like any other ordinance that we can't, just to draw some parallels to speeding, right? There's a lot of speeding goes on that is not caught, and there are no fines for it. But where there's an issue and where it comes up, and there are other instances, I guess I could make parallels to, but I feel like having this here allows there to be, if police are called to something or police to observe and they feel like they need to step in, it gives it a little bit of teeth if we were to have this ordinance.
Okay.
So it doesn't trouble me to have that there.
It does trouble me. I don't feel like we have the police force that has the time to be called away from a serious matter to address a mask mandate. My home was burglarized the 1st of August. We waited, and it's no fault to any state or city officer, but we waited 45 minutes to an hour before an officer could finally get away to come to our home. I would hate to think someone's life was truly in jeopardy for a million reasons that they deal with that I don't see, because they're at a church, wherever, because someone called them because someone else doesn't have a mask on.
So I guess I trust the police to make a good judgment call on priority. And I also consider that, I mean, everybody pretty well widely knows my stance on this, but, you know, I consider this ordinance a contribution to a life and death matter. That it's a life and death matter is not something for me to prove. It's here in black and white for us. And so I think it has weight, and I think that we have a police department that we have come to trust in every way we can imagine. They have done what they need to do. They have our trust, I think, to make good judgment calls on where a priority is. I think they have to do that every day. Whether we have this ordinance or not, that's something that I think is fair to say they have to do moment by moment.
Mark or Vicki, anything to say?
I agree with Rob that it's appropriate, and you know, I don't think obviously the police are going to be stationed at Walmart checking people going in, and I don't think our local companies are going to abuse that either, knowing that the police are busy. But if someone is making a huge scene and it becomes a public disturbance, that's a different story. Or if there are egregious violations that is a major problem, then authorities could be involved.
I feel that we're already very understaffed with our police department anyway. And it did happen in Springfield where people were calling the police right and left. You know, so-and-so doesn't have a mask on, so-and-so doesn't have a mask on. And it does detract from what our police force is already overwhelmed with, being short-staffed. Yeah.
So is there a compromise in this section to be made?
The third question begs another question. Would we go through and start cherry picking all of our ordinances to say, well, we don't have time, so let's start striking these violations. Let's start striking these fines and so forth. And I'm confused. I suppose why this is a challenge compared to any other ordinance that we have that involve fines for violations.
I think part of it comes from the comments that we were looking to lead and not enforce, but this particular ordinance has enforcement.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that changes how I'm thinking about it. I think that goes along with what I'm thinking.
Okay. Paul, do you have any guidance for us?
Well, I mean, it's you guys' call. There's no requirement that has to have penalty provision. I think actually worded it to where it's up to $100. I mean, you could, the fine could be anything short of that. It doesn't have to be 100. And then an officer has to go write a ticket. So, I mean, like I said, it's completely your call. If you want to completely take the penalty provision out, that's completely fine and would not make the ordinance void. If you leave it in, if the officers don't write any tickets for it, it's still an enforceable matter. I mean, I think Springfield is getting a lot of calls about it, but I think the city of Springfield's police officers' stance on it is they're basically not writing any tickets or enforcing it. So I'm kind of talking around in circles here, but in the other words, Springfield has a provision, but they basically don't write any tickets. So is it worth having it in there? So, I mean, it's like I said, it's completely you guys' call. I can't really give you any guidance per se.
So the current version does say effectively what you said, up to, it says not to exceed. So it doesn't stipulate it 100. It says not to exceed 100.
Right. So how it would work is if somebody got a ticket for it, they would come into municipal court, and then either myself through a plea or the judge would say what the fine is, but the cap on it would be $100. I'm assuming the $100 would be as if someone was just a repeat offender where they probably had multiple warnings, then started getting tickets, and then still was just, getting a ticket, multiple tickets, and just was refusing to wear a mask. Is that where I would see the cap coming in place?
That's kind of how I view it too. I mean, and I think Mark alluded to that. It's, if somebody or some situation, or even either way, a patron or even a shop owner, was a serious repeat offender and there were complaints, then there's something to be done in that way. And I think Paul's right. I think Springfield, I think it's widely known and understood that Springfield police have mostly been trying to educate and having a softer approach, but having the ability, if needed, to write tickets or do fines. But in most cases, simple reminders were enough. I mean, I think that, again, it goes back to, I certainly have, and I'm sure all of us on this board have the trust in our police department to make good decisions. And they have, in so many cases, been community building in their enforcement, and the opposite of trying to tear down or be strong-armed. And I think we're in a very fortunate place to have that kind of department where we can trust them with what I would assume would be our wishes as a board. Let's not strong-arm people. Let's start with educating, making sure that they are aware, friendly reminders, and so forth. And only as maybe Mark and I are suggesting, if it becomes something that's out of hand in an entity or some individuals, then it's something to fall back on.
Okay. Paul, for normal process, would this be something that I'd require a vote?
Well, if you're not going to make any changes, you wouldn't need a vote. But if there's a dispute between the aldermen as to whether or not they want the penalty provision, I would probably a vote as to how you want it to go so that it doesn't become an issue if this gets brought forth a week from now. So, I mean, I would probably go for a vote just to have some guidance as to whether or not it's going to stay in there for when it's brought for actual vote.
Do we have any other options that could be brought to the table in this before we have a vote?
You asked for compromise, and I couldn't think of any before, but I suppose it's possible. This is sort of a question more than a statement, but if we elected to maybe move forward with an ordinance without that, we could always amend it later on if it turned out that it was particularly not effective because there was no right.
That's correct. Paul, you could take it out for now, and like Alderman Foster said, and then if you get a week into the thing and it looks like you just really need some teeth to this thing, you could add a penalty provision later.
And I'd assume come to some compromise, then be divided right away on on some portion of language here.
Okay.
I can deal with that,
Yeah,
add it later.
that sounds like a good compromise to me.
Casey? Okay. Then for the draft, we will strike C, violations. Paul, are you still there?
You can hear me now?
Gotcha. I wanted to give you a moment. I know when we were talking, we reviewed.
You got me?
Are you still there, Paul? Okay, I'll check back with him soon. He also had some information on other cities that had either passed or tried to pass that he had researched, and he was going to be able to kind of give us some of that information as well in order to mix in with this, and we'll wait until he has a better signal, perhaps.
You. Now I'm here. You cut out. I'm sorry.
I apologize.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. I wondered if you could provide the information to the board that the research you had done on the other cities that had tried, and whether they succeeded or failed in this measure, and kind of what you learned from them.
Okay. Yes. So what I found is, and we look at a lot of these cities when we do ordinances,
Paul, we have lost connection with you.
here's a list: Rogersville, Willard, Stratford, and Battlefield ordinance.
Okay, let's go ahead and try to get him on a different method. We'll reach out to him by speakerphone. While we're working on that, I want to go ahead and outline what our public comment procedures will be. So we also reached out to several other cities to learn how they handle public comment, especially how they handle public comment in a pandemic situation where you're trying to achieve social distancing and the such. So from what we learned, we've developed a process that I think will work very well. There are some restrictions in here, but I think that will probably be more than generous. So for the first thing you need to know is our next meeting, next Thursday, September 10th, will be held at the new Justice Facility on the Square. The doors will open at 6 p.m. for the public to come inside the building and get a ticket if they are wanting to speak. They will need to provide their name and address in order to receive a ticket. There will only be 50 tickets issued. Now, when we talked to other cities, some cities had a limit, some did not. The cities who have most recently done this, that had limits, we found had about 30 people who actually came to speak. So we are going to limit ours to 50, and each one of those people will be provided 3 minutes each to speak. All of our individuals, our public who are in attendance and coming to speak, will be provided video access of the meeting, which will be taking place in a separate room. We will have staff who will be drawing numbers at random and calling them in that room, and a certain number of people, probably about 5, this is going to be trial and error, but about 5 people at a time will be escorted from that room into the room where the meeting is taking place. Each individual will be introduced and given their 3 minutes to speak. I will limit all comments to 3 minutes. In addition, any disrespectful or obscene language will cease your 3 minutes. We are asking that all members of the public who come to speak start by telling us whether they are for or against the issue. That way we don't have to decide based on their comments which column we think they fit in. It's very clear up front that they will please start with whether they are in favor or opposed, and then explain their position from there. We are hoping to conclude our 50 tickets around 7 p.m. If we have not gotten through our 50 tickets, we will close public comment at 7 p.m. so that we can, no, excuse me, no, it's just the tickets. I'm sorry, I said all of that wrong. We're going to take the 50. I apologize. We've talked about a lot of different items, and apparently I just got them all confused. So we will issue tickets until 7 p.m. So they have 6 to 7 to get a ticket. There are 50 tickets available. If all 50 tickets are claimed, we will hear all 50 individuals. After public comment has ended, we will read the bill and have a vote. Okay. The next agenda will be relatively light. There are certain items that we have been pulling for every agenda, even to just give update. Those will be stricken unless there is an emergent need. So for example, if we have a change order come up on one of our very active construction projects right now that has to be taken care of, you will see it next week. We will approve expenditures. We will approve minutes. We will do some of those normal operating items, but we will not dig in to projected items or items that maybe are not ready for any more than a status update. So we will put those off one more agenda. Any questions on that process I can clear up? I stumbled over it.
I've had a few people reach out to me on this, on the public speaking part. There are some people that have reached out that do have compromised immunity and don't feel safe coming and speaking in person. How is their voice going to be heard?
I'm glad you asked because I forgot to say that. Anybody who would like to email myself is welcome to and explain their position. And every email that I have received so far and will receive will be forwarded to all 4 members of the board and the city clerk. My email address is available on the website, but in case you have a pen handy, it is N as in Natalie, McNish, MCNISH @marshfieldmo.gov. You are welcome to email in your concerns or your gratitude or any other comment, and I will pass it along to all those who have a vote on it. Yeah, did you go, Paul? Okay. Hi, Paul.
Hello, sorry about that.
That's quite all right.
I'm out at Republic at my daughter's volleyball game. For some reason, all of a sudden the connection dropped. So what I was saying, I don't know how much I got cut out, so let me just kind of start over. So when this kind of came up, I started looking at some cities in the area of Marshfield that seem to be kind of the cities that we look to when we see how other cities do things in our area. And so here's kind of what I've found is, so there's a few cities that I looked at. So Rogersville, Willard, Stratford, and Battlefield have never considered a mask ordinance at all. And then Nixa and Ozark and West Plains, they've considered a mask ordinance and did the public, hearings that we were discussing, and then ultimately voted them down. And then Greene County, when Springfield passed their mask ordinance, Greene County had a companion one to do for the whole county, considered it, but then just decided not to implement it. So Greene County never did. Of the cities that have one, right now it's just Branson, Springfield, and Branson. Theirs is set to expire on September 8th, so it will expire next Tuesday unless Branson, extends it. And then Springfield's was passed back in July. It expires on October 14th unless it is extended. And so so basically, if we would pass one, we still wouldn't be the third city, at least at that point, because unless Branson extends, Branson's would expire. So if ours went in place on September 15th as written, then Marshfield and Springfield would be the only cities that have one. And then if Springfield let theirs expire, then after October 14th, then Marshfield would be the only city in this area. So that's just so you kind of have some comparables to other cities in our part of the Missouri.
So we'll know by the next meeting if Branson renews or not.
Correct.
Potentially.
Yeah,
Potentially.
If Branson
Well, we know if they
renew,
didn't.
it'll expire on the 8th.
Yeah.
Thank you, Paul.
You bet.
Okay. I'll let him disconnect here. And so the last portion of this meeting, when this issue came up during the last meeting at future agenda items, I was thinking more in process and I was not thinking of getting discussion on the item. So part of what I want to do tonight, and especially now that we've seen the draft, is have an opportunity for everyone to speak on this issue. And I'll kick it off and then I'll ask each of you to say something if you would like as well. So what I would like to say is that I do support masks, but I do not support a mask mandate. I choose to wear a mask, and before I was mayor back in March, I was part of a team of ladies in the community that banded together and found resources to make nearly 3,000 masks that were donated to residential care facilities, the schools, the fire department, anybody who needed them. So I support masks for those who want to wear them. In June, when I took office, we were starting to see our first uptick in cases of COVID in Webster County. And on July 6th, 2020, I issued my very first executive order. And that executive order required businesses to follow occupancy limits. It required frequent and enhanced sanitation. It required social distancing. And it required businesses to adjust self-serve business models into a full service model. It also strongly discouraged mass gatherings, and it strongly encouraged face masks. Also, that particular executive order excluded residential care facilities and the school because they are either governed by their own board or And also, they are governed by state regulations that were already dictating how they were to operate. At that time, we had 15 active cases in the county, and it had increased to 45 active cases within 7 days. So at the time of ordering this, which in my opinion was a bit of a shock to the business owners, and yes, we did receive some pushback from it, but I think they did a remarkable job of implementing it. And that executive order is still in place today. So those are the standards that are currently set. But following that, what I did was I started working closely with the health unit and with their board to gain a more focused understanding of COVID in Webster County. And that's when I chose the 4 zones of our total 9 zones in Webster County to follow active cases. And that is the chart that I've been providing to you the last 2 meetings, and the information I have been providing to you before that. That will tell you that at the time that I issued the executive order, we had 10 active cases in the greater Marshfield area. That increased to 26 cases by July 23rd, and then decreased to 5 by July 31st. We've been relatively low in COVID for the first part of August, but as expected and as predicted, the numbers increased as we re-entered the workforce and as we re-entered school. The numbers are currently at 16. 16 active cases in our approximately 7,000 population city. I have also noted that some of our major retailers, Walmart, Walgreens, and I believe it's the Dollar General store, or the dollar store, one of the two, or both, excuse me, that have implemented face mask requirements for their facilities. So I feel like the executive order is sufficient, and it is that example. Now, I will tell you from my personal changes since COVID happened, I don't get out all that much. So I can't tell you the percentage of the population that I feel is following this order, just like I had a hard time of telling you whether it was one or both Dollar General store that, that required masks upon entry. I don't feel like a mask mandate will increase our compliance. I think, in fact, it might decrease our compliance with this. In the big scheme of things, though, I am the one person at this table who will not receive a vote unless there is a 2-2 tie. So, with that, I would like the public to be able to hear from those who do have a vote. And I'd like to start with Mr. Bowers.
Sure. I wrote up a small response so that I would speak clearly. Approximately 2 weeks ago, the White House COVID-19 task force recommended that Missouri make a statewide mandate requiring masks due to increasing rates of transmission. This was not adopted by the governor, who instead left it up to local municipalities to decide for themselves. Today, the head of NIAID gave a warning to a number of states, including Missouri, related to increasing rates of infection and advising increased vigilance as it pertains to masking and social distancing. While I personally am not fond of being told what to do or telling others what to do, I also realize there are numerous laws that we abide by on a daily basis that were put in place for the sake of public safety. It seems only rational to me that there would be additional laws that would apply in the midst of a pandemic. We could argue for days on end over the benefits and shortcomings of wearing masks, but they have been worn by surgeons for over a century because they do, in fact, help limit the spread of germs and viruses. And if they can help to reduce the spread of this virus among our residents, especially those most at risk, it seems reasonable to do so. Knowing that you can be contagious for several days prior to the development of symptoms only strengthens this argument, as it is simply not enough to stay home only when you start showing signs of illness. Thankfully, most businesses in our town have been on top of this from the beginning. My hope is that by mandating the use of masks, we would bolster efforts that have already been made by increasing participation and helping to mitigate any further losses to area businesses by preventing another shutdown. It is possible that this decision will be viewed in hindsight as an overreaction, but I am personally more comfortable with that judgment being made than to later be judged as negligent for doing nothing. I am not an epidemiologist or an expert on infectious disease, but when experts on these issues representing the White House directly as well as NIAID advise that we take special precautions, how can we not choose to respond in the affirmative? And I recognize we have taken some precautions, but there is another step that is highly recommended that we have not. And thankfully, our numbers, we're only at 16 in Marshfield. I work in Springfield, and Greene County is climbing. In fact, most places in our general area are climbing, and now would be the time to take extra precaution.
Thank you, Alderman Bowers. Alderman Montgomery?
I had a lot more planned to say, but I'm going to cut mine shorter. On August 27th, at our regular Board of Alderman meeting, the board was asked if we had any future agenda items to speak on. Alderman Foster asked to have a discussion on a mask mandate. As soon as the meeting ended, I turned to Mayor McNish and I said, I have to abstain since I make masks. I don't think I should vote on this. She suggested that I speak to the city attorney. In speaking with the city attorney, I found out that it is not a conflict of interest, but the decision was up to me if I wanted to make a vote or not. I have been struggling with this all week. I have cried all week over this decision. I keep going back and forth if I should abstain or not. But I feel our citizens deserve and need a voice. Yes, they did elect me to make that decision, but I need to hear from them on more than just a yes vote in April. When I'm reading Facebook, it was assumed that people knew how I was going to vote. I don't even know how I'm going to vote. My plan on Thursday is to make tally marks for each yes and no opinion. That will come from the emails that we receive. That will come from the public speaking. That will come from people messaging me through Messenger. And I would be happy to make all of my messages public. I will take everything into consideration. This is not something that I'm going to take lightly. This has a lot of impact. I'm going off script here. This has a lot of impact on a lot of people. We have a lot of immune compromised people in our community. But we also have a lot of mom and pop businesses that this could kill. I've got to balance that. Yes, I do make masks. From the very beginning, my mom was a quilter. She had tubs of, I made as many masks as I could out of her quilt scraps and gave them away. I only started charging a very small fee for them when I had to purchase fabric and all the other materials. I make a whole $1.50 maybe on a mask that I sell. I'm not making a profit on this. The Saturday before our church reopened, after everything was reopened, I stayed up till 3 o'clock in the morning sewing masks. I made over 70 masks that day to give away to my church. And when I'm told that I will vote a certain way because I make masks is laughable. I'm sorry. Anybody out there who crafts to sell, you don't make money on it. You do it because you love to do it. Since we've been asked our personal opinion on masking, personally, I mask. I am one of those immune compromised people. I do forget to wear my mask sometimes. I'm human. We all forget to wear a mask sometimes because we're human. I went to my aunt's funeral on Tuesday. I forgot my mask and they asked for us to wear them. My family asked to wear them. Do I believe that masks work? Yes, I do. We have proof of that in Springfield with the beauty shop. They work. Do I think masks should be forced? No, I don't. I do think we should have enough respect for our fellow human beings to protect each other, but I also believe in a person's right to choose. Those who are pro-mask, they'll always mask up no matter where they go. Those who don't wear them, they won't wear them even if they're forced to. And I'll see the rest of it.
Okay. Thank you very much. Alderman Foster?
Yeah, so, I made several comments the other night, and most of those have been published. Not all, but most of them. I intend to review the emails, listen to public comments, and go from there. But it would take some other form of actual data to change my mind about the importance of this. It doesn't matter which way the vote goes on Thursday night. It cannot be said that this is not important. And there are a couple things I will say besides what I have said and what I will make as far as a statement on Thursday night. But, I think it's unreasonable to think that wearing masks are going to kill business. I assert that actually wearing masks as opposed to wholesale as is feasible, because there are exceptions that we have allowed for in this ordinance, right? They can actually save businesses because there are people who are immune compromised and of an age group that are more susceptible, that are reluctant to go out and patronize our businesses now. There are signs on businesses in Marshall, prominent businesses that have been here a long time, that say, look, we're adjusting hours so that we can deal with this. It's a serious deal. This is not a matter of infringing on anybody's rights. This is a matter of we need to step up at a time to try to recover. And by data, masks make a difference that could help us get to recovery of our economy and some state of normalcy, or in the meantime, do the best we can, because where we came from before this was a shutdown. And that is what kills businesses. Simply putting on a mask doesn't kill a business. It allows for dollars that are going to go instead to out of our area because of online sales to be spent in our own commerce and support the taxes that we need to run a business, or rather run a city, and provide the services that are necessary. And those expenses go on and on. That upkeep, those capital investments go on and on. And that's just one example. It's one sector where it's so important for us to get back. Masks will not stop commerce. It will let you more safely conduct commerce and prolong the ability to keep those doors open safely. I want to say one more thing. I will most likely reiterate this next week. More than 50%, right at, or maybe just over 50% of the people in the United States qualify in this sort of sector of immune compromise. That puts at least half of us right off the bat, just regardless of age, at increased risk. But by far, there are too many deaths across the board. Every age breakout that we have, there are too many deaths. But by far and away, the biggest group of age that is dying from this are the people of the greatest generation. And there is no group of people, when their time to sacrifice came, sacrificed more than they did. And I cannot believe that we would even balk, that it would even be in the conversation to be troubled about putting on a simple mask, to say, even if you just looked at that one group of people, to say, it's worth me doing this when I think how much they sacrificed when they had to sacrifice so much more than putting on a mask. And I'll leave you with that, of all the things, because Mark spoke eloquently and covered a lot of it, but I just want to leave folks with that piece of reality. It is a reality that those people are dying from this at a far advanced rate than anybody else, and they don't deserve it.
Thank you, Alderman Foster. Alderman Lee.
Before I voice my opinion, I would like to clear something up that has been repeatedly stated on social media about the possibility that if this mandate passes, there is a kickback through the CARES Act to fund the city hall or numerous other things in the city. I called Cyril Owen today, who is the county director of the CARES Act, and point blank asked him, is that a possibility? And his affirmative answer was, no, it is not a possibility. It is not going to be a possibility. It has never been a possibility. So there is that confirmed fact. That part is done over.
Thank you.
Now to my opinion. I am not in favor of this. Tuesday night, the mayor and I sat in on the county health meeting. Towards the end of that meeting, we were asked where we stood on this matter before it ever was tried and cured in the social media courts. I stated then that I was not in favor of it. I think it's a governmental overreach. I think exactly the opposite of Alderman Foster, and that's okay. That's how this process works. I think wearing a mask is going to hurt our local businesses because people that do not want to wear them are going to order that stuff online. That's going to cut that mom and pop shop when you can buy it on Amazon. It isn't going to help. I think when you tell people they have to, they won't. I think if you ask them to, you're going to get a much higher rate of compliance, which is our goal in this whole process. We have guidelines in place that appear to be adequate. I can't support this. I can't back this. I have had probably 50 phone calls, emails, messages. I have received some that will carry no weight due to the presentation of their opinion. The majority were respectfully presented, and those do carry weight. I can tell you none of them were in favor of forcing a community to do this. And unless something drastic changes, that number is not big enough to make me vote for it.
Thank you. So this gave us an opportunity to hear all of our voices, and the voices of the public can be heard again by emailing myself at N as in Natalie McNish, MCNISH @marshfieldmo.gov, and I will forward those to you. only I will probably wait until the end of the day to do that. Please note that I do work a 40+ hour job just like everybody else at this table. And online, Mark, sorry. If there are no additional comments at this time, I would take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. We'll see you next week.